to the reading of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Last week we were blessed with Deborah DeBaker reading Stave 1. Now we're at Stave 2 of the 5 staves, and this week's stave will be read by Daniel Klein. We're in the second week of Advent, and you'll notice that the Advent candles of hope and of peace have been lit. May we be filled with God's hope and with God's peace. Stave 2 goes into Ebenezer Scrooge's past, and this is essential for his transformation. We have to look at the legacy of how we arrived at where we are before we can move forward. And the Ghost of Christmas Past will do exactly that. Let's see what Ebenezer Scrooge is going to learn on this journey back into his childhood, his adulthood, and exactly what happened to him along the way. I can't wait. God bless.
Stave 2, the first of the 3 spirits. Scrooge went to bed and thought and thought. Marley's ghost bothered him exceedingly. He lay on this stage until he remembered, on a sudden, that the ghost had warned him of a visitation when the bell tolled 1. At length it broke upon his listening ear, deep, dull, melancholy. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. Scrooge, starting up into a half-recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child, as like one viewed through some supernatural medium which gave it the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white, as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. It wore a tunic of purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and, in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprang a bright, clear jet of light, by which all this was visible. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold me?" asked Scrooge. "I am." The voice was soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close beside him, it were at a distance. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the Ghost of Christmas Past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge. "No, your past." It put out its strong hand as it spoke and clasped him gently by the arm. "Rise and walk with me." The grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but finding that the spirit made toward the window, clasped its robe. "I am a mortal and liable to fall," Scrooge remonstrated. "Bear but a touch of my hand there," said the spirit, laying it upon his heart, "and you shall be upheld in more than this." As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon a country road, with fields upon either hand. The city had entirely vanished. The darkness and mist had vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground. "Good heavens!" cried Scrooge. "I was bred in this place. I was a boy here." "You recollect the way?" inquired the spirit. "Remember it? I could walk it blindfold," cried Scrooge. They walked along the road. Scrooge recognizing every gate and post and tree until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church, its winding river. Some shaggy ponies now were seen trotting toward them with boys upon their backs, who called to other boys in country gigs and carts driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits and shouted to each other, until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. They left the high road by a well-remembered lane and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick, with a little weathercock-surmounted cupola on the roof and a bell hanging in it. They went, the ghost and Scrooge, across the hall to a door at the back of the house. It opened before them and disclosed a long, bare, melancholy room, made bare still by lines of plain deal forms and desks. At one of these, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire, and Scrooge sat down upon a form and wept to see his poor forgotten self as he had used to be. The spirit touched him on the arm, and Scrooge, looking at the ghost, and with a mournful shaking of his head, glanced anxiously toward the door. It opened, and a little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in, and putting her arms about his neck, and often kissing him, addressed him as her dear brother. "I've come to bring you home," said the child, clapping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh. "Home, for good and all. Home, forever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And we're to be together all the Christmas long, and have the merriest time in all the world." Master Scrooge's trunk being tied to the top of the coach, the children bade the schoolmaster goodbye right willingly, and, getting into it, drove gaily down the garden sweep, the quick wheels dashing the hoar-frost and snow off the dark leaves of the evergreens like spray. "Always a delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered," said the ghost. "She died a woman," continued the ghost, "and had, as I think, children." "One child," Scrooge returned. "True," said the ghost. "Your nephew." Scrooge seemed uneasy in his mind, and answered, "Yes." Although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of the city. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. "Know it? I was apprenticed here," said Scrooge. They went in. An old gentleman in a Welsh wig sat behind a high desk. "Why, it's old Fezziwig, bless his heart!" Scrooge cried in great excitement. Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. "Ho, ho, my boys!" cried Fezziwig. "No more work tonight. Christmas Eve! Let's have the shutters up." It was done in a minute. Fuel was heaped upon the fire. The floor was swept and watered. The lamps were trimmed, and the warehouse was as snug and warm a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book, and went up to the lofty desk, and made an orchestra of it, and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. There were dances, there were forfeits, and there was a cake, and there was a great piece of cold roast. But the great effect of the evening came when the fiddlers struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Top couple, too. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig calves. They shone in every part of the dance like moons. When the clock struck 11, the domestic hall broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and every person individually was wished a Merry Christmas. During the whole of this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene and with his former self. It was not until now that he remembered the ghost and became conscious that it was looking full upon him. He felt the spirit's glance and stopped. "What is the matter?" asked the ghost. Said Scrooge, "I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all." "My time grows short," observed the spirit. "Quick." Again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. His face had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl, in whose eyes there were tears. "It matters little," she said softly. "To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, a golden one. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until, in good season, we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. With a full heart for the love of him you once were, I release you." He was about to speak, but with her head turned away from him, she resumed. "May you be happy in the life you have chosen." She left him, and they parted. "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "remove me from this place." "I told you these were the shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost. "But they are what they are. Do not blame me." "Remove me," Scrooge exclaimed. "I cannot bear it. Take me back. Haunt me no longer." In the struggle, if that could be called a struggle, in which the ghost, with no resistance on his own part, was undisturbed by any effort of its adversary, Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, being in his own bedroom, where he reeled and sank into a heavy sleep. Back at the editing desk. Thank you for watching Stave 2 of Charles Dickens. Hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give us a like and a subscribe, and then let us tell you when the next Stave is coming out. It's next week, by the way. Same time, same station on Sunday. Alicia will be reading Stave 3. And if this is putting you into the Christmas spirit, please head over to the website. There's a link in the description. And check it out, and please consider supporting our Blessing Box initiative. It's a great way for us to help out some folks in the community with some food and much needed supplies. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.